In the shadowed halls of the ancient kingdom of Valdoria, where bloodlines determine destiny and crown jewels hold mystical power, a shocking discovery threatens to tear apart a royal family forever. When Queen Consort Camilla Blackthorne reaches for the legendary Valdorian crown diamonds, gems said to recognize only true royal blood, an ancient curse awakens, and the palace guard's refusal to grant her access reveals a devastating secret that will shake the very foundations of the throne. What happens when the woman who married into royalty discovers that some doors can only be opened by those born to rule? The morning mist clung to the towering spires of Valdoria Castle like ghostly fingers reluctant to release their grip. Queen Consort Camilla Blackthorne stood at the vast window of her private chambers, watching the sun struggle through the thick clouds that perpetually shrouded the ancient kingdom. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman of 43 years whose beauty had been carefully maintained through the finest oils and treatments the royal treasury could provide, yet whose eyes betrayed a restlessness that no amount of luxury could satisfy. Today marked the 15th anniversary of her marriage to King Aldrich Valdor III, and by all accounts, she should have been content. The daughter of a minor nobleman from the neighboring kingdom of Thessara, Camilla had achieved what many considered impossible. She had captured the heart of one of the most powerful monarchs in the known world. Yet, as she traced the elaborate gold embroidery on her mourning gown, a gift from the king himself, she felt the familiar pang of something indefinable gnawing at her chest. The kingdom of Valdoria was steeped in traditions that stretched back over a millennium. Its people believed deeply in the mystical connection between their royal bloodline and the ancient magic that protected their lands. At the heart of these beliefs lay the crown diamonds of Valdoria, 3 magnificent gems known as the Tears of Celestine, named after the legendary first queen whose sacrifice had saved the kingdom from an ancient curse. The diamonds were more than mere jewels. They were said to be imbued with the essence of royal blood itself. According to legend, they would only respond to those born of the true Valdorian line, glowing with an inner light when touched by legitimate heirs. For 15 years, Camilla had been forbidden from even viewing them, much less touching them. The ancient laws were clear. Only blood heirs could access the royal vault where the diamonds rested. This restriction had never particularly bothered her before. She had her own jewels, her own crown for state occasions, and the respect that came with being queen consort. But lately, whispers had been growing louder in the court. Whispers about her childlessness, about the king's need for an heir, about whether the gods themselves disapproved of their union. The massive oak doors to her chambers creaked open, and her lady-in-waiting, Duchess Evelyn Mortimer, entered with the day's correspondence. Evelyn had served the royal family for over 30 years and possessed the rare ability to speak candidly with the Queen without overstepping boundaries. "Your Majesty," Evelyn began, her voice carrying its usual mixture of warmth and formality, "His Majesty requests your presence in the throne room at noon. There are visiting dignitaries from the eastern kingdoms." Camilla turned from the window, her silk gown rustling softly. "More talks of trade agreements, I suppose?" "Indeed, Your Majesty, though I believe there may be other matters discussed as well." Evelyn's tone carried a weight that made Camilla look at her more closely. "What other matters?" Evelyn hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Your Majesty, there have been discussions among the court advisors. About succession. About the need for an heir," Camilla finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I'm quite aware of what they're saying." The subject of children had become a source of increasing tension between Camilla and Aldrich. In their early years of marriage, they had simply assumed children would come naturally. When they didn't, the court physicians had been consulted, prayers had been offered to the ancient gods, and still nothing changed. Now, at 43, Camilla knew the likelihood of bearing a child grew smaller with each passing season. "Your Majesty," Evelyn continued gently, "perhaps it would be wise to attend the ceremony tomorrow."
"What ceremony?" "The blessing of the diamonds, Your Majesty."
"It occurs every 15 years, when the royal vault is open for cleansing and blessing. His Majesty will touch the diamonds to renew their power. It might be significant for you to witness this." Camilla felt her breath catch. In 15 years of marriage, she had never been present for this most sacred of royal rituals. She had assumed it was simply another tradition from which she was excluded by virtue of not being born royal. "Am I permitted to attend?" Evelyn's expression grew thoughtful. "The ancient laws say nothing specifically forbidding it, Your Majesty. They only restrict who may touch the diamonds themselves." For the rest of the morning, Camilla found herself unable to concentrate on anything else. During the diplomatic meeting, she smiled and nodded at appropriate moments, but her mind was consumed with thoughts of the ceremony. Why had she never thought to ask about attending before? Perhaps because some part of her had feared the answer. That evening, as she and Aldrich shared a private dinner in their quarters, she broached the subject carefully. Her husband was a man of 51 years, still handsome despite the silver now threading through his dark hair and the lines that marked his face. Lines earned through the weight of ruling a kingdom that faced constant threats from neighboring powers and internal political tensions. "Aldrich," she began, setting down her goblet of wine, "Evelyn mentioned tomorrow's ceremony. I was wondering—" The king looked up from his roasted venison, his green eyes, the famous Valdorian green that marked all true members of the royal line, meeting hers with surprise. "You wish to attend the blessing of the diamonds?" "If it's permitted, yes. In all our years together, I've never been present for any of the sacred ceremonies." Aldrich was quiet for a long moment, and Camilla could see him weighing something in his mind. Finally, he reached across the small table and took her hand. "My dear Camilla, you must understand that these ceremonies are steeped in traditions older than our kingdom itself. The diamonds, they're not merely jewels. They're a test, a connection to our ancestors, a proof of legitimacy that goes beyond any crown or title." "I know that," she replied, though she heard a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "I'm not asking to touch them or participate in the ritual. I simply want to witness it, to understand better this part of your heritage. Our heritage." The word "our" seemed to hang in the air between them. Aldrich squeezed her hand gently. "Very well, you may attend. But Camilla," he paused, his expression growing serious, "you must prepare yourself. The ceremony can be intense. The diamond's response to royal blood is not subtle. There will be light, energy, sensations that may be overwhelming for someone not of the bloodline." That night, as Camilla lay beside her sleeping husband, she found herself staring at the ornate ceiling of their bedchamber, where painted scenes depicted the great queens of Valdoria throughout history. Each one had been born to nobility. Each one had provided heirs to continue the line. Each one had been able to touch the sacred diamonds. What would happen tomorrow when she witnessed firsthand this connection between blood and magic that she could never share? And why did the thought fill her with both anticipation and a strange creeping dread? As dawn broke over the castle's ancient towers, Camilla rose and began preparing for what would prove to be the most significant day of her life as queen consort, though she had no way of knowing that by sunset, everything she believed about her place in the royal family would be shattered forever. The ceremony was scheduled for midday, when the sun would be at its highest point and its light could stream through the crystal dome of the vault chamber. Camilla chose her attire carefully. A gown of deep purple silk, the color reserved for royal consorts, embroidered with silver threads that caught the light as she moved. She wore her own crown, a beautiful but modest piece compared to the ancient crowns of the blood royals, and her finest jewelry. As she made her way through the castle's corridors toward the vault chamber, servants and courtiers bowed deeply. But she noticed something different in their expressions. Where once she had seen the automatic respect due to a queen, now she detected something else. Curiosity, speculation, perhaps even pity. The vault chamber lay deep beneath the castle, accessible only through a series of increasingly ancient passages. As Camilla descended the stone steps, the air grew colder and seemed to thrum with an energy she had never felt before. Torches lined the walls, their flames dancing in ways that defied the still air. At the final doorway, she was met by Sir Marcus Thornfield, the captain of the royal guard and keeper of the royal vault. Marcus was a man whose loyalty to the crown was absolute, whose family had served the royal house for generations, and whose stern countenance rarely showed emotion. Today, however, Camilla detected something in his expression that made her pulse quicken, reluctance, perhaps even concern. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing formally. "His Majesty awaits you within." Sir Marcus, Camilla replied. I trust there are no objections to my presence today? The captain's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Your Majesty, my duty is to protect the sacred artifacts and ensure the ancient protocols are followed. Your presence at the ceremony is unprecedented, but not forbidden. Something in his tone made Camilla study his face more carefully. Is there something you wish to say, Sir Marcus? For a moment it seemed as though the captain might speak, but then he simply shook his head and stepped aside. The chamber awaits, Your Majesty. As Camilla crossed the threshold into the vault chamber, she gasped despite herself. The room was circular, with walls of white marble that seemed to glow with their own inner light. At the center stood an altar of black stone, older than the castle itself, and upon it rested a crystal case containing 3 diamonds the size of a man's fist. Even from a distance she could see that they were unlike any gems she had ever beheld. They seemed to contain swirling galaxies of light within their depths. King Aldrich stood beside the altar, dressed in the ceremonial robes of his office, his own crown, the crown of kings, passed down through 47 generations, upon his head. Several court advisors and high priests flanked the chamber, their faces grave with the solemnity of the occasion. My queen, Aldrich said softly as she approached, welcome to the heart of our kingdom's power. As Camilla took her designated position, close enough to observe clearly, but far enough to avoid any accidental contact with the sacred artifacts, she felt the weight of centuries pressing down upon her. This chamber had witnessed the coronation of kings, the validation of heirs, the very proof of divine right that legitimized their rule. The ceremony began with ancient words in the old tongue, spoken by the high priest. Camilla found herself mesmerized by the rhythmic chanting, by the way the torch flames seemed to respond to the words, and, most of all, by the diamonds themselves, which had begun to emit a faint pulsing light. When the moment came for Aldrich to approach the altar, Camilla held her breath. She had heard descriptions of this moment but had never witnessed it. As the king's hands moved toward the crystal case, the chamber filled with a low humming sound, as though the very stones were singing. The moment Aldrich's fingers touched the case, the transformation was instantaneous and breathtaking. The 3 diamonds blazed with brilliant light, each one pulsing with energy that seemed to flow directly into the king's body. His own eyes began to glow with the same green light that marked his bloodline, and for a moment he looked less like a man and more like a conduit for some ancient cosmic power. The light grew brighter, filling the chamber with radiance that made the marble walls gleam like stars. Camilla felt the energy washing over her, and for just an instant, she experienced a sensation of profound connection to something vast and eternal. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light faded. Aldrich stepped back from the altar, his face serene but clearly drained by the experience. The diamonds returned to their gentle inner glow, and the humming ceased. It is done, the high priest intoned. The bond is renewed, the bloodline confirmed, the kingdom protected for another cycle. As the ceremony concluded and the participants began to file out of the chamber, Camilla found herself lingering, staring at the diamonds with a mixture of awe and something she couldn't quite identify. They were beautiful beyond description, powerful beyond imagination, and forever beyond her reach. Your Majesty, came Sir Marcus's voice behind her, we must seal the chamber now. Camilla turned to go, but something made her pause and look back at the captain. Sir Marcus, may I ask you something? Of course, Your Majesty. In all your years guarding these artifacts, have you ever known someone not of the bloodline to touch them? The question seemed to surprise him. Your Majesty, such a thing would be unthinkable. The ancient laws are absolute in this matter. But, hypothetically, if someone did touch them, what would happen? Sir Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression troubled. Your Majesty, there are legends, stories of what befalls those who attempt to claim power that is not rightfully theirs. But they are just stories. What kind of stories? Stories of rejection, Your Majesty, of pain, of the diamonds themselves revealing truths that perhaps should remain hidden. He paused, then added quietly, Your Majesty, Some doors are meant to remain closed, even to those we love. As Camilla finally left the vault chamber and began the long climb back to the upper levels of the castle, Sir Marcus's words echoed in her mind. Some doors are meant to remain closed. But why did she have the growing conviction that this particular door was exactly the one she needed to open? The events of the day had awakened something within her, a hunger for answers, for validation, for proof that she belonged in this world of ancient magic and divine bloodlines. She had married into royalty, but had she truly become royal? The diamonds would know. They always knew. That night, as the castle settled into sleep and the guards changed their watches, Camilla made a decision that would change everything. She would find a way to touch the diamonds herself, consequences be damned. She had to know the truth of what she was, even if that truth destroyed her. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the kingdom, revealing secrets that had been buried for generations, and forcing Camilla to confront the possibility that sometimes the price of truth is far higher than anyone is prepared to pay. Part 2. 3 days had passed since the blessing of the diamonds ceremony, and Camilla found herself unable to think of anything else. The image of those magnificent gems blazing with otherworldly light haunted her dreams and occupied her thoughts during every waking moment. She had tried to resume her normal routine, attending court sessions, receiving visiting nobles, overseeing the castle's domestic affairs, but everything felt hollow and meaningless compared to the burning question that now consumed her. She needed to touch those diamonds. The rational part of her mind recognized the folly of such thoughts. She was a queen consort, respected and beloved by the people, living a life of luxury and privilege that most could only dream of. Why risk everything for what might amount to nothing more than satisfying curiosity? But the irrational part, the part that had been growing stronger since witnessing the ceremony, whispered that this wasn't about curiosity at all. This was about belonging, about finally proving to herself and everyone else that she was truly worthy of the crown she wore. On the 4th day, while King Aldrich was away on a hunting expedition with several foreign dignitaries, Camilla decided to take action. She had spent hours studying the castle's architectural plans in the royal library, memorizing the layout of the lower levels and the guard rotations that Sir Marcus had mentioned in passing over the years. She knew that the vault was never completely unguarded, but there were brief windows during the changing of the watch when a determined person might slip past unnoticed. Her first step was to gather information. Under the pretense of researching the kingdom's history for a cultural exchange with neighboring lands, she spent the morning in conversation with Brother Aldwin, the keeper of the royal archives. The elderly monk was delighted to have someone show interest in the ancient texts and scrolls that documented Valdoria's past. "Your Majesty," Brother Aldwin said, his wrinkled hands carefully turning the pages of a manuscript bound in leather that was probably older than the castle itself. "The legends surrounding the crown diamonds are quite fascinating." According to these texts, they were originally 3 separate stones, each with its own power. Camilla leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. What kind of powers? Well, the first diamond, known as the Eye of Truth, was said to reveal the true nature of anyone who looked into it. The second, the Heart of Courage, would grant strength and bravery to righteous rulers. The third, the Soul of Wisdom, provided divine guidance in times of great decision. And they only respond to royal blood? According to the texts, yes. But Your Majesty, there's something interesting here. He pointed to a passage written in the ancient script. This chronicle from the reign of Queen Isidora the Just mentions an incident where the diamonds reacted to someone not of royal birth. Camilla's heart began to race. What happened? A courtier named Lord Blackwood attempted to steal the diamonds during a time of civil war. When he touched them, they didn't simply reject him, they revealed something unexpected. The text is somewhat cryptic, but it suggests that Lord Blackwood was discovered to be the illegitimate son of a previous king. The diamonds recognized his royal blood despite his common upbringing. So it's possible for them to recognize royalty even in unexpected places? Brother Aldwin nodded thoughtfully. The text suggests that royal blood calls to royal blood regardless of circumstances of birth or legitimacy. Though, of course, Your Majesty, these are ancient stories. Whether they hold truth or are merely legends is difficult to say. Camilla spent the rest of the afternoon walking the castle grounds, her mind spinning with possibilities. If the diamonds could recognize hidden royal blood, what might they reveal about her? Her family's lineage was well documented, minor nobility from Thessera, with no connection to any royal houses that she knew of. But family histories could be incomplete, secrets could be buried, and bloodlines could be more complex than official records suggested. As evening fell and the castle began to settle into its nighttime rhythm, Camilla made her final preparations. She had chosen a simple dark cloak that would help her move unseen through the corridors, and she had carefully timed her descent to coincide with the briefest gap in the guard rotation, a window of perhaps 10 minutes when the vault corridor would be momentarily unmonitored. The journey down to the lower levels felt like descending into another world. With each stone step, the air grew colder and seemed to thrum with an increasingly tangible energy. The torch flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, and more than once Camilla thought she heard whispers in the darkness, though she knew it was probably just the wind moving through the ancient passages. She reached the corridor leading to the vault chamber just as the guards were completing their rotation. Through careful observation over the past few days, she had learned that there was always a brief moment when the departing guard was out of sight and the arriving guard had not yet reached his post. Heart pounding, she slipped into the shadows and waited. The minutes seemed to stretch into hours, but finally she heard the footsteps of the departing guard echoing away down the corridor. Camilla counted to 30, then slipped from her hiding place and moved quickly toward the vault chamber. The massive door stood before her, carved with ancient symbols that seemed to shift and move in the flickering torchlight. To her surprise, the door was not locked. She had expected complex mechanisms, magical wards, or at the very least, a simple key. Instead, the door opened with a soft push, as though it were merely waiting for her arrival. Later, she would wonder if this should have been her first warning that something was not quite as it seemed. The vault chamber looked different without the pageantry of the ceremony. In the silence and solitude, it felt less like a sacred space and more like a tomb. The white marble walls seemed to glow with their own inner light, and the black altar at the center of the room drew her forward like a magnet. The 3 diamonds rested in their crystal case, and even in the dim light, they were breathtakingly beautiful. They seemed larger up close, and Camilla could swear she saw swirling galaxies of light within their depths, as though each stone contained an entire universe waiting to be explored. She approached the altar slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it, the moment of truth that would either validate her place in the royal family or reveal her as the imposter she sometimes feared herself to be. With trembling hands, she reached toward the crystal case. The moment her fingers touched the crystal, several things happened simultaneously. The chamber filled with a low humming sound, similar to what she had heard during the ceremony, but somehow more urgent. The torch flames around the room flickered and danced as though responding to some unseen force, and the diamonds themselves began to glow with a soft, pulsing light. Encouraged by this response, Camilla carefully lifted the crystal case. It was heavier than she had expected, but she managed to set it aside and stood face to face with the legendary crown diamonds of Valdoria. Up close, they were even more magnificent than she had imagined. Each one was perfectly cut, flawless, and seemed to contain depths that the eye could not fully comprehend. Taking a deep breath, Camilla reached out and touched the first diamond, the Eye of Truth. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Light exploded through the chamber, not the gentle glow she had expected, but a brilliant, searing radiance that seemed to penetrate her very soul. Pain shot through her arm where she touched the diamond, but she found she could not pull her hand away. Images flooded her mind, visions of the past, present and possible futures, spinning through her consciousness like a whirlwind of light and color. She saw herself as a child in Thessera, playing in gardens she had forgotten. She saw her mother beautiful and sad, holding secrets that had died with her. She saw her father, the minor nobleman who had raised her with love, but always seemed to be hiding something. And then she saw deeper, into memories that were not her own, into bloodlines that stretched back through centuries of kings and queens, of power and betrayal, of love and loss. The truth hit her like a physical blow, and she would have fallen if not for the fact that she could not release the diamond. The noble family that had raised her, the people she had called mother and father, they were not her parents at all. She was the daughter of King Aldric's own father, the previous king, born of a secret affair with a lady of the court who had died in childbirth. She had been hidden away, raised in a foreign kingdom to protect both her life and the reputation of the crown. She was not a queen consort who had married into royalty. She was a princess by birth, a true daughter of the Valdorian royal line. The diamonds recognized her because royal blood ran in her veins as surely as it ran in Aldric's. But there was more. As the visions continued to pour through her mind, she saw another truth that made her earlier discovery pale in comparison. King Aldric was not her husband, he was her half-brother. Their marriage, celebrated by the kingdom and blessed by the gods, was built on a lie that neither of them had known. The man she had loved for 15 years, the man she had shared her bed and her dreams with, was her own blood relation. The horror of this revelation gave her the strength she needed to finally break contact with the diamond. She stumbled backward, gasping, her mind reeling with the implications of what she had learned. The chamber continued to glow with residual energy from the diamonds, and she realized with growing alarm that the light was not fading as it should. "Your Majesty." The voice came from behind her, calm and unsurprised. Camilla spun around to find Sir Marcus standing in the doorway to the vault chamber, his expression grave but not shocked. He did not look like a man who had just discovered his queen committing a sacrilegious act. He looked like a man who had been expecting this moment. "Sir Marcus," she managed to gasp, her voice hoarse from the ordeal. "I can explain. There is no need for explanations, Your Majesty. I have been waiting for this day for 15 years. The captain stepped into the chamber, and Camilla noticed that he was not wearing his usual armor. Instead, he was dressed in simple clothes, and in his hand he carried an object that made her blood run cold, a set of heavy shackles. "You knew," she whispered, understanding beginning to dawn. "You knew what I would discover. I have known from the moment you set foot in this castle who you really are, Princess Camilla. I was there the night you were born. I was the one charged with taking you away to protect you. And I have been waiting ever since for the day when you would inevitably seek the truth. But why didn't you tell me? Why let me live in ignorance?" Sir Marcus's expression softened slightly, and for a moment he looked less like the stern captain of the guard and more like a tired old man carrying a burden he had held for too long. "Because knowledge of your true parentage would have meant your death, Your Majesty. There were those at court who would have killed you to prevent any challenge to the succession. Your supposed marriage to King Aldric was the only thing that kept you safe. It made you valuable as an ally rather than dangerous as a potential rival. And now? Now the truth has been revealed, and everything changes. The diamond's light will not fade until the truth they have shown is acknowledged and acted upon. The entire castle will know by morning that something has happened in the vault. Questions will be asked, investigations will be conducted, and the truth will come out." Camilla looked down at the shackles in his hands. "You're here to arrest me. I'm here to save your life, Your Majesty. Again. But this time, you're going to have to trust me completely." As the implications of her discovery continued to unfold in her mind, Camilla realized that touching the diamonds had not solved her problems. It had created new ones that threatened not only her position as queen, but her very existence. The truth had set her free from ignorance, but it had also trapped her in a web of royal politics and forbidden knowledge that might prove impossible to escape. The diamonds continued to glow, their light serving as a beacon that would soon draw others to discover what had transpired. Time was running out, and the choices she made in the next few minutes would determine whether she lived to see another day or became another casualty of the secrets that surrounded the Valdorian crown. "What do you propose we do?" she asked, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Sir Marcus smiled grimly. "We disappear, Your Majesty. Before the king returns from his hunt, before the court discovers what has happened, before the truth destroys everything you have worked to build, we disappear and we pray that we can stay ahead of those who will surely come looking for us." As Camilla took one last look at the crown diamonds, still blazing with the light of truth she had unleashed, she understood that her life as Queen Camilla was ending. What remained to be seen was whether Princess Camilla the woman she had been born to be, would survive long enough to discover what her true destiny might hold. The sound of footsteps echoing in the distant corridors told her that her time for decision was over. The truth had been revealed, and now she would have to live with the consequences, whatever they might be. Part 3. The secret passage behind the vault chamber was something Camilla had never known existed in all her 15 years as queen. As Sir Marcus led her through a narrow corridor carved directly from the living rock beneath the castle, she realized how little she truly understood about the place she had called home. The passage was ancient, probably dating back to the original construction of the fortress, and it wound through the very foundations of the castle like a hidden bloodstream. "Where does this lead?" she whispered, though the sound seemed to carry further than it should in the confined space. "To the old crypts beneath the chapel," Marcus replied quietly, his torch casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. "And from there, to a passage that connects to the caves in the cliffs below the castle. It's how I brought you into the kingdom as a baby, and it may be how you leave it now." The irony wasn't lost on her. She was retracing the path of her own secret arrival, fleeing from the truth that should have set her free. Behind them, she knew the diamond's light was still blazing in the vault chamber, a beacon that would soon attract attention. How long before someone investigated? How long before King Aldrich returned from his hunting expedition to find his wife, his sister, had vanished into the night? As they moved through the darkness, Marcus began to share the story he had carried in silence for decades. It was a tale that transformed everything Camilla thought she knew about her life, her marriage, and her place in the world. "Your father, the old king, was a man of great passions," Marcus began, his voice echoing softly in the tunnel. "He loved your mother, Lady Celestina of House Ravencrest, with a devotion that bordered on obsession. But she was already married to Lord Ravencrest, and their affair had to remain secret." Camilla tried to picture her true mother, this Lady Celestina whose name she had never heard before tonight. What was she like? Beautiful, intelligent, and strong-willed. "She looked very much like you, actually. When she became pregnant with you, the situation became impossible to hide. The court was already suspicious of their relationship, and a child would have been proof of their transgression." They reached a junction where the passage split in 3 directions. Marcus chose the left path without hesitation, and Camilla realized he had planned this escape route long ago, probably from the very day she had arrived at the castle. "The king and Lady Celestina made a desperate decision," Marcus continued. "She would fake her own death in childbirth, and you would be spirited away to safety. I was chosen for this task because of my absolute loyalty to the crown and my connections in neighboring kingdoms. But she didn't fake her death, did she?" Camilla asked, though she already knew the answer from the visions the diamonds had shown her. "No, the birth was difficult and she died trying to bring you into the world. Her last words were a request that you be raised far from court, where you could live a normal life, free from the dangers and intrigues of royal politics." They emerged into a larger chamber that had once been part of the castle's original crypt. Ancient tombs lined the walls, their occupants long since turned to dust. Marcus led her to a particular tomb, its surface carved with symbols that matched those on the vault chamber door. With surprising ease, he pushed aside the heavy stone cover to reveal not a body, but another passage leading downward. "This is where your story truly begins," he said, gesturing for her to climb down into the hidden tunnel. "The noble family in Thessera who raised you, Lord and Lady Blackthorn, were distant relatives of your mother. They were told you were the orphaned daughter of a cousin, and they raised you with love and kindness. When you came of age and caught King Aldrich's attention during a diplomatic visit, it seemed like fate." As they descended deeper into the earth, following a passage that led toward the sea cliffs, Camilla found herself thinking about that first meeting with Aldrich. She had been 19, attending a grand ball at her adoptive father's estate. The young king had been there as part of a diplomatic mission to secure trade agreements with Thessera. Their attraction had been immediate and mutual, and within 6 months they were married, in what the kingdom celebrated as a love match between neighboring realms. "Did you know who I was when Aldrich fell in love with me?" she asked. "I suspected from the moment I saw you. You had your father's eyes and your mother's bearing, but I could never be certain until tonight. The diamonds don't lie. They recognized you as the true daughter of kings." The passage opened into a natural cave system that ran through the cliffs beneath the castle. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks below filled the air, and Camilla could smell the salt tang of the ocean. They were close to the sea now, close to escape, but she found herself reluctant to take the final steps that would carry her away from the only life she had ever known. "Marcus?" she said, stopping in the middle of the cave. "If I'm truly Aldrich's sister, then our marriage is illegal, immoral, and grounds for both of your deaths if the church discovers the truth," Marcus finished bluntly. "The kingdom has strict laws about royal blood mixing within the same generation. It's considered not just a sin but a crime against the natural order." "But we didn't know. Surely that matters?" "In the eyes of the law and the church, ignorance is not a defense. The marriage would be annulled. Both of you would be stripped of your titles, and you would likely be executed or exiled. At best, you would be imprisoned for life." The weight of this reality settled over Camilla like a burial shroud. Everything she had built, everyone she had loved, everything she had believed about herself, all of it, was built on a foundation of lies that had now crumbled beneath her feet. They reached the end of the cave system, where a narrow ledge overlooked the churning sea below. A small boat bobbed in the water, tethered to a hidden dock that had probably been used for smuggling operations in years past. The moon was setting, and dawn was still hours away, providing cover for their escape. "Where will we go?" Camilla asked, staring out at the dark expanse of water. "There's a ship waiting beyond the coastal waters. The captain owes me certain favors, and he's agreed to take us to the free ports beyond the eastern kingdoms. From there, you can disappear, create a new identity, live a life free from the burdens of royalty. And Aldrich?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "When he returns and finds you gone, when he discovers what the diamonds revealed, he will understand the truth. He's a good man, Camilla. The discovery will devastate him, but he'll recover. The kingdom needs him to recover." As they climbed down to the hidden dock, Camilla found herself thinking about her husband, her brother, and the life they had shared. Their love had been real, even if it was founded on ignorance. Their struggles to have children suddenly made sense in a new and horrible way. The gods themselves had protected them from bringing a child into the world that would have been born of incest, even unknowing incest. The boat was small but seaworthy, designed for stealth rather than comfort. As Marcus prepared to cast off, Camilla took one last look up at the castle that had been her home for 15 years. Lights were beginning to appear in some of the windows. The early rising servants starting their daily routines, unaware that their queen was fleeing into the night like a common criminal. "I need to ask you something," Camilla said as Marcus began rowing them away from the shore. "Why are you doing this? Why risk everything to help me escape?" The old knight's strokes never faltered, but she saw something in his expression that she had never noticed before. A deep, abiding sadness that spoke of old wounds and older loyalties. "Because I failed you once before," he said quietly. "The night you were born, I was charged with protecting you, and I did that by taking you away. But I also promised your mother that I would watch over you always, and I failed in that promise when I allowed you to marry Aldrich without knowing the truth. You couldn't have known what would happen. I could have investigated your lineage more thoroughly. I could have found a way to tell you the truth before your marriage. I chose the easier path of silence, and that choice led to tonight's disaster." As they reached the larger ship waiting in the deeper waters, Camilla realized that Marcus was not just helping her escape, he was seeking his own redemption. Both of them were fleeing the consequences of choices made long ago, and both of them would have to find a way to live with the weight of their secrets. The ship was a merchant vessel, flying the colors of the neutral trading ports that existed in the spaces between kingdoms. Its captain, a weathered man who asked no questions and demanded no explanations, welcomed them aboard with professional courtesy and nothing more. As the ship set sail eastward, away from Valdoria and toward an uncertain future, Camilla stood at the stern and watched her homeland disappear into the morning mist. She was leaving behind everything she had ever known, her title, her position, her marriage, and the man she had loved for half her life. But she was also finally free to discover who she truly was beneath the roles and expectations that had defined her existence. Princess Camilla, the lost daughter of kings, was dead. What remained to be seen was who would emerge from the ashes of that royal identity. The sun was rising now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that reminded her of the light that had blazed from the crown diamonds when they revealed her true nature. That light had shown her the truth, but it had also marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. As the ship sailed toward the horizon, carrying her toward whatever destiny awaited in the lands beyond the reach of Valdorian law, Camilla made a silent promise to herself. She would not spend the rest of her life running from the truth. Someday, when she was strong enough and wise enough, she would find a way to return and claim her rightful place in the world, not as a queen consort who had stumbled into royalty through marriage, but as a true daughter of the realm who had earned her crown through trials and transformation. The diamonds had shown her who she was. Now she would show the world who she could become. Behind her, in the castle she had fled, the crown diamonds continued to blaze with unnatural light, waiting for the moment when their true princess would return to claim her birthright. The vault chamber had become a shrine to revealed truth, and all the king's guards and all the court's wise men could not make the light fade until the wrong that had been done was made right. The diamonds knew who their true mistress was, and they would wait for her return, no matter how long it might take. Part 4. 5 years had passed since the night Princess Camilla fled Valdoria, and in that time she had traveled to the furthest corners of the known world. She had learned to fight with sword and dagger from mercenary companies in the sun-baked wastes. She had studied ancient magic with the mystic scholars of the Crystal Towers. She had survived assassination attempts, political intrigues, and natural disasters that would have killed a lesser person. The soft queen consort who had once worried about court etiquette and diplomatic protocols was gone, replaced by a warrior scholar whose very presence commanded respect. She now went by the name Sarah Nightwind, a wandering knight whose reputation preceded her into every tavern and court from the eastern kingdoms to the frozen reaches of the north. Few knew her true identity, but many had heard tales of her skill with a blade and her uncanny ability to see through lies and deceptions, a gift that had grown stronger since her encounter with the Eye of Truth. On this particular morning, she sat in a tavern in the neutral port city of Crosshaven, reading a letter that had found its way to her through a network of contacts that spanned half the world. The letter bore the seal of House Thornfield, and she recognized Sir Marcus's careful handwriting despite the passage of years. My lady, the time has come to return home. King Aldrich grows weaker by the day, and the physicians say he has perhaps months to live. He has never taken another wife, never remarried, and the kingdom faces a succession crisis that threatens to tear the realm apart. The noble houses grow restless, and there are whispers of civil war. More importantly, the crown diamonds have never stopped blazing with the light of truth you awakened 5 years ago. The vault chamber has become a pilgrimage site for those seeking divine guidance, but the light grows stronger each year, as though calling for something, or someone, to return and set things right. I know you have built a new life in the wider world, but Valdoria needs its true princess now more than ever. The kingdom that cast you out may be the only kingdom that can truly be yours. Your faithful servant, Marcus, Thornfield, Sarah, set the letter down and stared out the tavern window at the busy harbor beyond. Ships from a dozen kingdoms flew their colors in the morning breeze, representing all the places she had traveled and all the people she had met in her years of wandering. She had found friends and allies, had made a difference in the lives of many, and had carved out a reputation that was entirely her own. But as she watched a ship flying Valdorian colors dock at the harbor, she felt the familiar tug of home that she had been trying to ignore for months. No matter how far she traveled or how completely she reinvented herself, she could not escape the truth that the diamonds had shown her. She was the rightful heir to the throne of Valdoria, and the kingdom was calling her home. The journey back to her homeland took 3 weeks, and with each mile that passed beneath her horse's hooves, Sarah felt herself transforming once again. The confident wanderer who had made her way in the world began to give way to something else. Not the naive queen consort she had once been, but something new. A princess who had earned her right to rule through trials by fire rather than accidents of birth. She had sent word ahead through Marcus's network, and when she finally crossed the border into Valdorian territory, she found a small group waiting for her at the crossroads. Sir Marcus was there, older and more weathered than when she had left, but still bearing himself with the dignity of a true knight. With him were a dozen men and women she didn't recognize, younger members of the royal guard and court officials, who had grown up hearing whispers about the lost princess. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, bowing deeply as she dismounted. The title felt strange after years of being called simply Sarah, but she found it fitting in a way it never had before. "Sir Marcus, you look well for a man who's been harboring treasonous thoughts for 5 years. A smile creased the old knight's weathered face. "Treason requires betraying the rightful ruler, Your Majesty. I have been serving the crown faithfully all along." As they rode toward the castle, Marcus filled her in on everything that had happened since her departure. King Aldrich had indeed fallen ill, struck down by a wasting sickness that the court physicians could not identify or cure. Some whispered that it was divine punishment for his unknowing transgression, others that it was simply the weight of ruling alone taking its toll. Either way, he was dying, and the kingdom faced an uncertain future. The noble houses are already positioning themselves for a power struggle, Marcus explained. Lord Ravencrest claims the right of succession through his marriage ties to the old royal line. Duke Montclair insists that the crown should pass to him as the king's closest male relative. The post-fiction male Lady Blackwood has put forward her son as a potential ruler, citing ancient laws about bloodline succession. "None of them know about me? A few suspect, but none know for certain." The story we told was that Queen Camilla suffered a breakdown after discovering her inability to bear children and fled the kingdom in madness. It was kinder to your reputation than the truth, and it explained your disappearance without raising uncomfortable questions about the marriage. As they crested the hill that provided the first clear view of Valdoria Castle, Sarah felt her breath catch. The ancient fortress looked exactly as she remembered it, its towers reaching toward the sky like stone fingers. But there was something different about it now, a sense of waiting, of anticipation, as though the very stones were holding their breath. "The diamonds," she said, noticing an unusual glow emanating from the lower levels of the castle. "They've grown brighter every year," Marcus confirmed. "The light is visible even from outside now. Pilgrims come from across the kingdom to pray in the vault chamber, believing that the divine presence will grant them wisdom or healing. Some say they can hear the diamonds singing." That evening, they made camp in the forest outside the castle walls. Sarah had decided to wait until the next day to announce her return, wanting one last night to prepare for what would surely be the most challenging day of her life. As she sat by the campfire, staring at the distant glow of the diamond's light, she thought about the man she would soon face again, Aldrich, her brother, her former husband, the man she had loved for 15 years before learning a truth that had shattered both their worlds. How would he react to her return? Would he see the princess she had become, or would he only remember the queen who had fled in the night? The next morning, Sarah dressed not in the practical traveling clothes she had worn for years, but in armor she had commissioned from the finest smiths in the eastern kingdoms. It was made of steel so highly polished it seemed to glow with its own inner light, decorated with silver inlays that formed the symbols of ancient Valdorian heraldry. Over this, she wore a cloak of deep purple silk, the color of royalty, fastened with a brooch that bore the seal of the true royal line. She rode alone to the castle gates, her small retinue following at a distance. The guards who manned the walls clearly didn't know what to make of the armored figure approaching, but they could see the quality of her equipment and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Halt!" called the captain of the gate guard. "State your name and business." Sarah reached up and removed her helmet, letting her auburn hair fall free around her shoulders. The reaction was immediate, and electric gasps of recognition, whispers of disbelief, and then a growing murmur of, "The Queen! The lost Queen has returned!" "I am Princess Camilla of the House of Valdor," she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard that was rapidly filling with people. "True daughter of the late King Edmund, rightful heir to the throne of Valdoria. I have come home to claim my birthright and save my kingdom." The great gates swung open, and she rode into the courtyard where she had spent 15 years as a queen consort. Now she had returned as something far more dangerous. A true princess, with the strength to enforce her claim, and the wisdom to rule justly. Word of her arrival spread through the castle like wildfire, and within an hour she found herself in the throne room, facing the man she had once called husband. King Aldrich sat on the ancient throne of Valdoria, but she could see immediately how much the years and his illness had changed him. He was thin, almost gaunt, and his once vibrant green eyes were dimmed by pain and exhaustion. But when he looked at her, she saw recognition, understanding, and something that might have been relief. "Camilla," he said softly, his voice carrying across the great hall. "You've come home." "I have, brother," she replied, using the title that acknowledged the truth they both now knew. "I've come to set things right." The court was in chaos. Nobles who had been planning their own power grabs were suddenly faced with the return of a claimant whose right to the throne was unquestionable. Those who had known her as a gentle queen consort now saw a warrior princess, whose very presence seemed to command the attention of the ancient magic that protected the kingdom. "The vault," Aldrich said, struggling to rise from his throne. "The diamonds. They've been waiting for you." Together they made their way to the vault chamber, followed by a procession of courtiers, guards, and officials. As they descended into the lower levels of the castle, the air grew thick with anticipation and the humming of ancient power. The vault chamber blazed with light so bright it was almost blinding. The 3 crown diamonds had grown in power over the 5 years of her absence, and now they pulsed with energy that seemed to fill the entire space. The crystal case that had once contained them had long since been removed. No earthly container could hold such radiance. Sarah approached the altar without fear, knowing that this time she came not as a desperate woman seeking answers, but as a princess claiming her birthright. As her fingers touched the first diamond, the eye of truth, the light exploded outward, but instead of pain she felt only a sense of completion, of coming home. The diamonds sang, their voices harmonizing in a chord that seemed to resonate through the very foundations of the castle. The light spread beyond the chamber, flowing through the corridors and rooms above, touching every person in the castle with its radiance. In that moment, everyone present understood the truth. This was no pretender or usurper. This was their true princess, returned at last to claim the crown that had always been hers by right. Aldrich stepped forward, and with hands that shook only slightly with his illness, he removed the crown of kings from his own head. It was a gesture that spoke of years of guilt, of responsibility carried too long, and of love for both the woman he had unknowingly wronged and the kingdom he was finally able to serve properly. "Princess Camilla," he said formally, "I return to you the crown that should have been yours from birth. Rule wisely, rule justly, and may the gods forgive us both for the ignorance that led us astray." As the ancient crown settled on her head, Sarah felt the full weight of her destiny fall into place. The diamond's light reached its crescendo, then gradually faded to a warm golden glow that would serve as a beacon of hope for the kingdom. She was no longer Sarah Nightwind, the wandering warrior. She was no longer Camilla Blackthorn, the uncertain queen consort. She was Princess Camilla of Valdoria, first of her name, true heir to the throne, and the ruler her people had been waiting for. The lost princess had come home at last, and the kingdom could finally heal from the wounds that secrets and ignorance had caused. The crown diamonds of Valdoria blazed with satisfied light. Their long vigil finally ended, their true mistress finally crowned.